Summer 1943. The air itself seemed rationed, thin and harsh in the dust of the Midwestern camp that had once been farmland. On the horizon, wooden watchtowers stood like exclamation marks carved into the sky. German women, weary and stiff from transport, shuffled through the gates with the mechanical gait of people who had learned to carry fear like a second skin. They expected barbed wire, barking orders, and bowls of thin soup that tasted of metal and resignation. What greeted them, instead, was something far stranger, the scent of sugar. It drifted out of a low mess hall where a fan hummed lazily in the open window. The women stopped short, nostrils flaring. Anna Vogel, tall and broad-shouldered from years of farm work, whispered, "Yes, rechts us." Sweet. The word sounded almost obscene after months of black bread and ersatz coffee. Behind her, Greta Hoffman frowned. 19, with sharp cheekbones that were chiseled even sharper, she muttered, "A trick. They want to mock us." She crossed her arms, as if folding her hunger inside her chest. The guards, young Americans in khaki, exchanged looks but said nothing. They seemed almost amused that hardened prisoners could be ambushed not by guns, but by the humble aroma of butter and flour. Inside the hall, the surreal tableau unfolded. Rows of tin trays, glasses filled with cold milk beating with condensation, and impossibly, plates piled with cookies. They were round and golden, with edges that glowed like the rim of a summer sunset. To women who had gnawed on dry crust scavenged from market stalls, the sight looked less like reality and more like a hallucination. Lieselot Bauer, 32, who had left 2 children behind in Hamburg, gripped the edge of a table as if it might vanish. Her mind leapt back to the last letter she had sent home, telling her husband to water down the soup so the children could have seconds. She thought, what if they could see this? A cookie in each small hand. It felt cruel that her first thought was not joy but guilt. Hilda Kramer, the youngest of 21, stared at the glass of milk as though it might explode. "It's too white," she whispered. "Like paint." She dipped a cautious finger in and licked it. The taste was cold, creamy, and shocking in its abundance. She began to laugh, then slapped her own mouth shut. Laughter was dangerous. The guards urged them forward. "Eat. It's for you." Anna sat stiff-backed at the table. She lifted a cookie but did not bite. "If this is poison," she said in a voice made of gravel, "it is the kindest death I will know." Greta rolled her eyes and snatched one, biting hard. For a moment her expression was stone. Then, reluctantly, almost against her will, her lips twitched. "If it's poison," she muttered, "then I hope for a second dose." One of the guards chuckled. "That's Betty Crocker's deadliest weapon." The joke went untranslated, but his grin was disarming enough to soften the silence. For a few minutes, nothing existed but chewing. Crumbs clung to lips. Fingers trembled. Gulps of milk left mustaches they forgot to wipe away. It was a scene almost comic in its innocence. Enemy women licking sugar from their fingertips under the watch of boys who might have been their brothers. But beneath the sweetness, unease festered. They all knew rations back home had shrunk to a desperate 1,200 calories a day. Women fainted on trams. Children traded toys for crusts. Yet here in captivity, they were being fed like guests. To chew a cookie was to chew on a contradiction. Anna set down her half-eaten biscuit. "Why?" she demanded. Her German was heavy but clear. "Why give us this?" No answer came. Only the fan hummed, pushing the sugary air to the hall like an invisible hand. The women looked at one another, crumbs on their lips, questions in their eyes. It was not the hunger that unsettled them now. It was the kindness. And what came after the sweetness would disturb them even more. The women sat with plates cleared, bellies warm for the first time in months, but their eyes would not settle. For in every sip of milk they tasted absence, and in every cookie the memory of ashes. Anna Vogel's mind flicked back to Lower Saxony, to a winter of beet tops and potato peels. She had dug at frozen ground until her knuckles split, pulling out vegetables the size of fists and dividing them among 8 mouths a home. When the youngest cried, she chewed slowly and pretended to be full. That was Germany in 1943, 1 part bread, 3 parts performance. Greta Hoffmann remembered queuing in Berlin for bread that had the density of stone. The women whispered rumors that sawdust was in the dough, though no one dared confirm it. She once traded a pair of stockings for half a loaf and watched it vanish in a day. Now she stared at the American mess hall at the careless abundance of loaves stacked high and muttered, "They feed their prisoners better than we feed our soldiers." Lieselot Bauer, the mother, thought of her children as if they were seated beside her. In Hamburg, the nights had become a choreography of sirens and shadows. She had tucked her sons into bed while plaster dust rained down from ceilings. By morning, water lines snaked around blocks of rubble, mothers cradling tin pails. The bread lines grew longer as the buildings grew shorter. Here, in this camp, stew bubbled in great vats, the scent filling the hall like a hymn. Her children had not smelled such things in years. The guilt struck sharper than any guard shout. Hilda Kramer, cynical Hilda, tried to mock it. "Look at them," she whispered to Greta. "They drink milk like water. They waste it. Back home, we guard a jug like treasure." She laughed too loudly, the sound hollow. When she caught herself, her face flushed. Even mockery felt dangerous here, because the truth was worse. She wanted what she mocked. Cold facts, harsh contrasts. The numbers told their own story. In 1943, German civilians survived on roughly 1,200 calories a day, a diet so thin women fainted on trams and black market prices soared to absurdity, a kilo of butter costing half a week's wages. Meanwhile, across the ocean, American farms had turned war into profit. In POW camps like this one, German captives were given nearly 3,000 calories daily. Meat, bread, potatoes, coffee, even cigarettes. To the women, each calorie was a paradox. America was the enemy, yet it treated its prisoners as if they were guests. Germany called itself their motherland, yet left mothers scouring fields for nettles and dandelion leaves to boil into soup. Personal testimonies, imagined but grounded. Anna whispered one night to Latte, "I want to hate them, but how does one hate the hand that feeds you?" Greta spat crumbs on the table and hissed, "Because while we eat, our families starve. That is how." Latte said nothing. Her silence was not agreement, but exhaustion. She closed her eyes and imagined her boys, hands cupped, waiting for just a sip of milk. Hilda, on the other hand, muttered, "If my brother saw me with a cookie in my hand, he'd think I'd changed sides." Perhaps he'd be right. A small humor beat. One afternoon, an American sergeant named Tom Alvarez placed a strange plate before them, dark discs with white cream sandwiched in between. He tried to explain in broken German, "Zwei Keks, ein Cream together." Greta frowned, poked one, and declared, "2 biscuits for one? Americans have no discipline." Hilda smirked, then licked the cream and whispered, "At least their lack of discipline tastes sweet." The guards laughed, and the moment cracked a heaviness, if only for a breath. Emotional escalation. Yet laughter sat uneasily in their throats. It felt like betrayal to smile while Hamburg burned and Berlin starved. Latte once caught herself laughing and immediately covered her mouth, whispering a prayer. "Lord, forgive me." The cookie had become a paradox. No longer food, but guilt shaped in dough. When night fell, the camp grew quiet except for the hum of cicadas and the occasional clank of the watchtower bell. The women lay awake, bellies full yet hearts heavier than ever. In Germany, Hunger had been the great equalizer. Here, abundance became the enemy. The milk was too white, the cookies too soft, the stew too rich. Every bite mocked the memory of home. And still they ate because to refuse sweetness was impossible. But to accept it was even harder. And what came next, the unspoken bargain behind all this abundance, would make the taste turn bitter once again. By the third week in camp, the shock of abundance dulled but never disappeared. The women still paused each time trays of food appeared, as if waiting for the trick to be revealed. Yet the Americans were not feeding them out of charity. Kindness in war is rarely free. Captain James Whitaker, a broad-shouldered officer with the tired eyes of a man who had seen Europe before it burned, oversaw their unit. He carried himself with patience, not cruelty. His deputy, Sergeant Tom Alvarez, had a smile too wide for war, a habit of slipping foreign words into conversation like coins into a fountain. To the women, they were paradoxes, soldiers who carried pistols on their belts and cookies in their hands. At first, Whitaker merely observed. He watched Anna Vogel's stiff posture, Greta Hoffman's sharp retorts, Lotte Bauer's haunted silences, Hilda Kramer's nervous laughter. Then the questions began, casual, almost careless. Your town, how far from Hamburg? Were the factories still working? Do you know if the Luftwaffe moved east? The women traded glances. They knew the game. No interrogator stormed in with threats. Instead, questions floated in on the aroma of stew and fresh bread. Anna clenched her jaw. She had vowed to give nothing. When Whitaker asked about her farm, she spat out only one sentence. My cows are thinner than me. The captain smiled, jotting nothing, but she felt exposed anyway. Greta, ever sarcastic, tried to toy with them. When Alvarez asked about German tanks, she shrugged. They eat less than we do. The guards laughed, but Whitaker's pencil moved, recording even her throwaway joke. Later, in the barracks, Greta cursed herself. Every crumb tastes like a bribe, she whispered, and I take anyway. Lotte struggled most. Each night, she dreamed of her children's hollow cheeks. Each morning she awoke to another generous tray. The food pulled at her body. The thought of her boys pulled at her heart. To answer even a simple question felt like betraying them. Yet to remain silent meant wasting what she had been given. Lord, she prayed under her breath, why is kindness harder to bear than cruelty? Hilda was the most conflicted. She mocked the Americans, yet she found herself softening when Alvarez butchered German words just to make them smile. One evening he placed a cookie in her hand and said, Keksgut? His accent was so dreadful that Hilda burst into laughter before she could stop herself. That laughter frightened her more than hunger ever had. Cold facts beneath warm food. By 1943, over 370,000 German POWs were held in camps across the United States. Reports later revealed the humane treatment, paired with small comforts, music, books, food, proved more effective in breaking loyalty than outright force. Many captives admitted after the war that it was a contrast, not the cruelty, that shook their faith in Nazi propaganda. Every cookie, then, was more than sugar. It was strategy, personal voices. One evening, Whitaker sat across from Anna and said evenly, wars aren't won only with bullets. Sometimes bread can do more damage. He pushed the tray toward her. She wanted to shove it back, but her hands betrayed her, breaking the bread before her brain consented. Greta hissed at Hilda that night. He thinks we are children, bribed with sweets. Hilda, licking sugar dust from her fingers, replied softly, perhaps children are harder to break. A humor beat amid suspicion. When Alvarez attempted to explain baseball to them, miming swings with broom, Greta rolled her eyes. So you waste hours chasing a ball, then call us undisciplined? The women laughed. a sound so out of place in captivity that the guards joined in. For a moment, war dissolved into absurdity. But laughter could not erase the weight of what they knew. Every word, every smile, every bite risked loosening their grip on loyalty. The right demanded obedience. The Americans demanded nothing, yet their generosity spoke louder than orders. By candlelight, Anna whispered to Latte, "We are fighting two wars now, one with guns, and one with our own stomachs." What none of them knew was that soon, news from home would shatter the illusion entirely, and turn every cookie into a weapon sharper than steel. The news arrived on thin paper, carried by an American orderly who read the telegram twice before handing it to Captain Whitaker. Hamburg, July 1943. Firebomb for days on end. Tens of thousands dead. Whole districts reduced to cinders. Lieselot Bauer's hand shook as she read the translated notice pinned to the board. Hamburg, her city, her children, her husband. She did not weep at first. She simply stared at the cookie in her palm, its golden surface trembling with her breath. Then she crushed it to powder. "Ash," she whispered. "Everything is ash." The others crowded around her. Hilda tried to speak, but only managed a hollow "neen." Greta pressed a fist against her mouth. Even Anna, who had always held herself like iron, faltered. For a long time the barracks were silent except for Latte's whisper, repeated like a prayer turned curse. "Ash, ash, ash." The cookies no longer looked like gifts. They looked like mockery. How could one choose sweetness when one's family choked on smoke? The breaking point. That evening, Whitaker entered the mess tent quietly. He did not carry questions, only bread. He set it down and said, "Wars end, but hunger makes people believe lies. That's why you're here, not to be mocked, to see." His voice was tired, not triumphant. Anna met his gaze. "To see what?" Whitaker hesitated. "That the world is larger than the lies you were told. That kindness is not weakness. That strength can come with a soft edge." His words rang both noble and cruel. For the women, they tore open a wound deeper than any interrogation. The Reich had promised them loyalty, sacrifice, honor. Yet here, the enemy offered milk and cookies, and the unbearable suggestion that life could be otherwise. The symbolic climax. Hilda snapped first. She hurled her cookie against the wall. It shattered, scattering crumbs like white shrapnel. "We eat while they starve," she cried. "We eat while our families burn." Greta, normally biting, whispered instead, Maybe we've been lied to." Her voice was small, uncertain, like a child testing forbidden words. Anna's eyes glistened. For the first time, she did not resist. She lifted her cookie, broke in half, and placed one piece in front of Latte. "For your boys," she murmured. It was no substitute, but the gesture itself cracked something inside them all. Latte, shaking, finally ate the crumb as if it were communion. "If my children had just one of these," her voice broke. Resolution and reflection. The mess hall smelled the same, sweet, warm, ordinary. Yet nothing was ordinary now. Every bite was a question, every swallow an accusation. For the German women, the greatest shock of captivity was not cruelty. It was kindness. Not the bullet, but the cookie. Not the barbed wire, but the milk. In that contradiction lay the slow erosion of certainty, the shattering of illusions they had carried like armor. The night ended with silence, broken only by the hum of cicadas. The crumbs on the floor looked almost like snow or tiny white flags of surrender scattered in defeat. The cookies were not merely sweets. They were mirrors. In their softness, the women saw the hardness of what they had endured. In their sweetness, they tasted the bitterness of lies. And in their crumbs, they glimpsed a fragile truth, that sometimes the sharpest weapon in war is not what wounds a body, but what awakens a heart.